He wrote a piece today on the MVP race, and he joins us now on Grant and Danny on the Rude Guest Hotline. Rude, the most reliable heating and air conditioning products in the DMV. Seth, how are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good, buddy.
Doing well. We went through all the list of the finalists ahead of the honors night that's coming up next week and who's actually going to win these awards. But there's a couple particular awards we want to get your thoughts on in lieu of you writing the piece on the MVP. So we'll just start there. The debate is largely Matthew Stafford against Drake May. I think Stafford is the favorite. He was just named the first team All-Pro by the same folks that largely vote on the award, which is normally an indication he's going to win it. What's your take?
Yeah, it's for me. This is Drake. This ought to be Drake May's award. I think if you look at the numbers, Drake May finished first in QBR. He was first in the sort of volume translation of QBR. Stafford, by the way, was fourth in QBR. Now, I'm not here to tell you that that's the end-all, be-all. That's the entire thing. But when you consider the context of what that metric does not capture, it doesn't tell you that Matthew Stafford was throwing to much better receivers than what Drake May had. It doesn't tell you that Stafford had the better offensive line. It doesn't tell you that he had Sean McVay calling his plays. It doesn't tell you that Stafford was supported by a really good running game. So I think when you look at I think you have sort of this, Drake May has the baseline metrics, and then when you consider all the additional context, it only further pushes me towards Drake May for MVP.
Why do you think Stafford has such is it as simple as the big, bold stats? It seems to be that's more or less the consensus, right, among all the non-smart folks. Like idiots like myself, basically. I'm going, yeah, I'd probably vote for Matt Stafford. Is it just because of the bold ink there at the top of the page?
What do you mean, like to the touchdowns?
Yeah, touchdowns, yards, how few interceptions he had, how prolific he was for a great team with a really hard schedule. Like, do you think that's why? Why do you think he's more consensus? And you've got him third on your ranking. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I have him third. Yeah, I think it's the combination of the basic numbers, the touchdowns, right? And I think we've got to be able to get past that and say, like, hey, how effective were you on a down-to-down basis? And consider all the factors around the quarterback. And then the second thing is I think that ultimately I think sometimes people just want to give it to the guy who's been around for a long time and feel like he ought to have one. To me, that doesn't work for me. I'm not gonna give him the award just because of that. He had an amazing season. I think that's true. I think he was the third most valuable player. That's a great season, but he's not number one.
Of those two, those are the two guys that everybody's talking about that one's going to win it, right? May or Stafford, and you've kind of laid out your case for Drake May. Who's being undervalued here? Who are some of the guys that you think are MVP candidates that maybe should get more attention?
Yeah, I mean, the guy that, and I know it's a hot take, the guy that I have at number 2 is Dak Prescott, and I realize that he is nowhere near the conversation when it comes to MVP, but I think that's because of, truly the fact that he doesn't have a good defense. If they had a decent defense, if they had the Rams defense, that's all you're asking for, or then he would be in the MVP conversation because Dallas would be in the playoffs and easily. So Dak Prescott, if you look at the numbers, he was relied upon very heavily. I think I sort of make a similar argument with Stafford, with what I do with May and Stafford. Okay, I think the counter argument I hear on Dak Prescott is, well, look who he's throwing to, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. That's true, but a worse offensive line than Stafford, a worse play caller, worse running game. But he has really similar numbers when it comes to efficiency, and they relied on him so heavily. He was their offense. He was their team because the defense was so bad. He also it's easier to play quarterback when you are playing from ahead. You can do things like run play action and not take risks because you're ahead. Dak Prescott did not have that advantage. He was playing from behind quite frequently, and his numbers were still great.
And Seth Walder with us here on G&D, what is the best stat that's in favor of Drake May for you? You know what I mean? Like, what's the one where you go, someone here isn't, the next guy isn't even close in this regard? What's the one that if you only had 10 seconds to explain to somebody, what's the one for Drake May that you go, man, that is so elite?
I'm going to cheat because I'm going to give you the one is QBR because it's going to capture everything, but that's not the blowaway stat. The blowaway stat is completion percentage over expected. It's basically an accuracy stat. Yep. Drake May was plus 9%. That's the record for a quarterback since the stat was created in 2016. Best season ever in that metric.
Well, and beyond that, I mean, you could say like CPOE takes into account difficulty of throw and like what should and shouldn't be completed. So there's a little bit of that in there. But for his completion percentage to be so historical and his ADOT, how often he pushes the ball down the field to be what it is miraculous. This is not just like check down Charlie in your way to 72%. They really threw the ball into some big-time windows, middle of the field, down the field. I mean, it's like eating fast food every day and not gaining weight. It's amazing.
I like that analogy. That's the number one thing that when we talk about CPOE is we're accounting for that, because you can't just look at completion percentage because, like you said, what if you're just throwing the ball 2 yards downfield? It's not really that hard. No, he was pushing the ball downfield, and so he gets credit for that, and it's one of the reasons why he was the best quarterback this year.
So one of the things, and I'm not saying you, Seth, but it frustrates me a little bit, is sometimes we hold personnel and a coaching staff against a player. Mm-hmm. Other times we don't. It's kind of like we pick and choose when we decide to do it. Your point about the Rams versus the Patriots, I would take the Rams personnel every time, so that's not a question. I would take the Rams offensive staff every time, so that's not a question. But just in general, just your thoughts on that it feels like sometimes we hold it against somebody and sometimes we don't.
I think that's fair. I think it's one thing that when I do this exercise, so I do this, the story you're referencing, it's a 100-player MVP ballot. I try to keep in mind, do I do it perfectly fairly every time? No, but I do think about, because I think you're right. It's like, when do we do this? When do we hold it against somebody? And when do we not? And it's hard to perfectly capture all that. I do try and keep it in mind. It's like why C.J. Stroud is higher than I think in my list than I think most people would think, because he had a terrible offensive line in front of him. It's why Caleb Williams is not on that list, because he had a great running game, great offensive line, and great coach, and still mediocre efficiency. And so I do try to apply it, but I think you're right that we could all be better in the consistency of that.
And that's not the only one. There's consistency across the board that bothers me with MVP. Like, there's one that's actually going to work in Stafford's favor, not hurt him this time, which is, in the past, I've always heard, and I think this is ridiculous, I've never agreed with this, like, if you don't win the division, you don't win MVP. Yeah. If you're a wild card team, you weren't even the division champion, don't come to me to talk MVP. No one's brought that up. Like, they're playing road games in the playoffs. They're down they won a lot of games, but they didn't win the division, and that's always been held against. I'm not saying Justin Herbert should have won it or whatever, but like, he can't win it because Mahomes is going to win that division or whatever. And
I could not agree more.
That's always been odd. And with Stafford, I haven't heard it brought up one time. The schedule is brought up a lot for the Patriots, strength of schedule. When if you actually look at common opponents for Drake May and Matt Stafford, May's got better numbers against common opponents, and it's not close.
Yeah, I think that I completely agree with you. I think it's very interesting where it's like, you got to win the division, or it's about wins. You got to make the playoffs. It's like we talked about Dak Prescott, right? He's not even consideration because they didn't get to the playoffs. But then the QB wins things goes out the window with Stafford, and it's like I don't like to harp on that because we shouldn't be considering that. I mean, no one thinks Sam Darnold should be in the MVP conversation, even though they were the 1 seed. That's correct. That is the correct answer. But I do think it is pick and choosy where it seems like that takes hold.
Seth, on this list, and I love reading it. It's just so informative and good, and I love how you make stats accessible to adults like me. But give me some other names that are higher than anybody would think on that list for you.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll give you a few. Chris Jones, I think that he was knocked this year a lot. People really, and it was maybe a little bit of a down year, I guess, for him a little bit. He barely, he was not an all-pro. But if you look at the numbers, I mean, he was right there. I'm the second best defensive tackle behind only Jeffrey Simmons. It's just, he was 8th in all-pro voting, but he's still the best pass rush win rate of any defensive tackle, 10.5 sacks created, 7 sacks. Like, he was still a very effective defensive tackle this year, even in that. I think a guy, one I didn't write about that popped. This is a player that I thought I had ranked high, but then when I write this story, I send it around to personnel folks in the league, front office people and ask them what they think. Who am I higher on that I should be? Who should I be higher on? Who should I be lower on? A guy like Kamari Lassiter, I had pretty high and then was told, no, not high enough. That's how good he was this year. So those are like some names that pop for me. Sometimes it's about where I start. Like I underranked Carson Schlesinger at the beginning of the year. I mean, at the beginning of this process, and people consistently told me how great he was. So I think those are some that come to mind. I thought, there were some divisive players. I mean, like guys like Penei Sewell and Deion Dawkins. I had people tell me each of them were the best tackle in the league this year. I also had each of them say down year for them. They should be lower on your list. So I love that. To me, that's one of my favorite parts about this process is that player evaluation is so far from a settled science, and we can have really smart people who drastically disagree on some of these players.
Seth Walder does a great job covering the NFL for ESPN, dives deep inside the numbers. Go check out his piece on his top 100 most valuable players this year right now at ESPN.com. Seth, thank you. We appreciate you, buddy.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
Be well.